Okay, we're gonna reopen the council meeting. Adam, you wanna, well, I guess in summary, we met in closed session and council is recommending that we have legal counsel proceed with further negotiations with the Voights regarding assessment issue, so. You know, Adam's gonna speak about the third-party contact of contractors.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, had the opportunity to talk to Pat Beatty with the League of Minnesota Cities on the policy that I believe the council discussed and adopted back in October with respect to contact with the city attorney and third-party contractors.
It's not adopted yet.
Okay, thank you. The policy, I guess, in draft form that was discussed by the council. Had expressed concern about the last sentence on that policy, and I do have a clean copy with that sentence deleted. But essentially, her suggestion, and after talking with her, I guess I generally agree, is that that language is probably best dealt with through whatever agreements you have with your contractors, that they are not to incur costs on behalf of the city through discussions with citizens, that any costs need to be authorized by the council. Just to ensure that there's no confusion, that the city is not trying to regulate citizen speech there. And then I guess the other point just to mention, and I did have a discussion with Rena on this, but under the contact with the city attorney, state law does impose obligations on city attorneys to address, reports of misconduct, if city money is alleged to be missing or something like that. State law imposes reporting duties. And so just want to clarify that to the extent something like that were to arise, if somebody who is not authorized to contacts me, that's a call I'm obligated to take and address appropriately. So I just wanted to add that piece of clarification. And I do have some revised copy that has that sentence deleted there. So it's, yes, this context by sentence, sentence right there.
Okay.
I don't know if the council has any questions with respect to that suggested revision?
I guess I'm fine with that, with the change.
Anybody else? Okay. Dwayne? John? Sounds good. Okay, thank you, Adam. Okay, next item on the agenda is approve additions to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve the additions to the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Open forum.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Vince Schaefer, 541 Caroline Lane. I see we have a full voting council tonight, so what I have to say does not have to come into play tonight, but I feel it's something that should be addressed. I'll refer to the October 10th council minutes, specifically the mayor's report. It said motion by member Willenbring, second by member Simon, to table action on approval of the letter until next month. Yes, Simon and Willenbring, nays Hagan and Palmer. Now, I was at this meeting and I recall the mayor at that point saying that it's a tie vote and the mayor breaks ties on a tie vote. It's not in the minutes here, but I'll go on to read motion by Member Palmer, second by Member Hagan, to approve the letter to staff as is. Ayes, Hagan and Palmer. Nays, Simon and Willenbring. The mayor broke the tie, but it doesn't say which way you voted. Okay, with that, let me refer to a memo from Riley Retzer, who's a research attorney with the League of Minnesota Cities. Tie votes. The mayor in a statutory city is only authorized to break a tie vote when the council makes an appointment to fill a council vacancy. Aside from this exception, the statutory mayor does not have authority to break tie votes in any other circumstances. Tie council votes otherwise fail. Thank you. I hope this is something that you will take to heart and address. And I have one other question on the agenda for tonight. Item number 7, public hearing, 6:30 p.m. approximate start time. And then it lists 2 items. Are these both public hearings or?
Actually, the proposed tax levy and budget, it's a meeting. It's not really a public hearing.
Okay, so just, the public hearing is just for the
Public meeting and the
water
public
rates.
hearing is for the water conservation rate.
Thank you.
Rick Tallman, 25594 Lake Road. I just wanted to address the policy that is on the agenda tonight for contacting the city attorney or third-party contractors that the city attorney has just addressed. I just wanted to point out that the reason this was all brought up was that I had contacted Banyan, and I understand that you want to limit people contacting your third-party contractors. I totally understand that. And I fully agree that a person should not be calling a third-party contractor and incurring a cost. But you make it sound as though my contacting Banyan cost the city of money. Did my contacting Banyan cost the city any money?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
No, okay. There was a cost to the city because of it, because I did that, and that came from Rena contacting the city attorney that created the criminal action against me. So there was a cost there, but yet your new policy still allows that to happen without council approval. Just so you know that, okay? The other thing I want to point out in the expense budget for next year, you're increasing the repairs and maintenance in the water fund budget, which is on page 9 of your budget expense for 2015, increasing it from $25,145 to $32,190, but yet this year only $11,513 was spent. And I understand the reason it says for the standpipe by the school is cracked, and I understand that, but if less than half of the budget was spent this year, which that budget went from $8,000 to $25,000 last year, when I pointed out the bond payments were not properly allocated in the original expense in the water rate study. So the repairs and maintenance budget went from $8,000 to $25,000 last year, which $4,500 of that was spent. This year, of the $25,145, $11,513 was given to me at
Yes, and if you
Meeting.
remember, Rick, when we met last,
last week, yeah.
the 10th, I think it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you that the Kramer bill was still not in there. I still don't have that yet.
Okay.
And that's around 7,000, so we're getting closer up to the 20.
Okay, but
11 and 18.
a number of those expenses were like one-time expenses. They weren't, something that's ongoing. The SCADA upgrade for the thing was $4,700. I'm just trying to point out that jumping that budget to another 32,000 really is unwarranted. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm Dennis Hanson. I put the water heater in the city hall here about a month or two ago. And I guess there's a lot of people, or some people complaining about it, about the price. They were wondering why we didn't replace the gas water heater with another gas water heater, which was identical. That gas water heater would have cost about $4,500. So I think we chose to go with a less expensive water heater and save some money. And, you know, I think the problem probably was when the place was built, why would you put in a $4,500 water heater to begin with? You have one here and you have one at the fire hall. So I don't know why, you know, you're complaining about something that costs $1,500 when, you know, you blew $10,000 already on 2 water heaters that last, what, 6 years maybe, 7 years? However old this building is.
This one was 8 years. Up there, I think, was maybe 4.
Okay. So I was just here to clarify that, so I don't know if you have any questions about it anymore, or.
I don't, Dennis, but I think another question brought up was maybe the operating cost. Do you have a feel for operating costs of electric versus gas on this particular model?
I would think that it would be a little bit more if it's electric. Probably not a whole lot, because there's not a whole lot of water use here. I would think the main cost would be replacing the water heater in another 8 years. When it dies, you know, it's gonna rust out again. So I don't think you'll ever overcome that expense.
The one you put in has a lifetime?
Lifetime warranty on the tank.
Okay. Anybody got any other questions?
I'm fine.
I'm just curious if there was, and we usually don't act on things that are on the open forum, beyond that it didn't come to arena, and then if we need to discuss it, but was there an energy management system that went in with the new electric one, so it'd be an off-peak?
Oh, I did check, and I did forward that to the council, that I did check with Mark Ostendorf from Excel. I actually looked for a rebate, and would there be, you know, anything we could do with dual peak, off-peak? And he says, no, it wouldn't pay for the little bit of usage that we're doing here.
You're probably burning more electricity right here with these lights on than what you burn in a week with that water heater.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Dennis. Anybody else? Okay, next item is consent agenda.
Also move to accept.
I'll second that.
Motion been made second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Board and staff report, please. John?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm going to go through both October and November, if that's all right with you. All right. First, I'll do October 2014. There were 33 hours and 8 citations written in a month for adults. There was 3 speeds, 1 no valid driver's license, 1 no insurance, 1 theft, 1 driving after revocation, and 1 driving while intoxicated. There was also 1 juvenile citation issued in October for speeding. Call types in the month of October were a couple of accidents, the intoxicated person that resulted in a minor citation. There's 2 abandoned vehicles. One of those was moved. One of them was ended up being towed. 2 animal complaints. Those were both found dogs. In the month, there was actually 4 DWIs. One of those was handled by the citation. 3 of those were urine tests pending results yet. There were some neighborhood disputes. All 3 of those neighborhood disputes involved the same parties. It's involving a property line dispute. If you remember back in October, you also saw a call that was canine narcotics. That was one of our officers on a traffic stop who requested Waite Park come out with their drug dog on a sniff. Did locate some marijuana in a vehicle at that time. The property damage was some car windows being busted out on Birch Street. A couple of thefts. Just the theft by itself was the theft of a license plate. And there was 2 theft from vehicles. One of them was simply an empty laptop bag. And the other one, again, of the concerning type, it was a unlocked vehicle in which credit cards and a handgun were taken again. And there were 73 traffic stops during October. For the month of November then, there were 38 contract hours and 9 citations. 1 for winter parking, 1 for a stop sign violation, 1 for no proof of insurance, 1 for possession of liquor by an underage person, 1 no valid DL, and 1 for disorderly conduct. There were also 3 combination citations. The 1 combination was for small amount of marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia. And we had driving after revocation and no proof of insurance, and then expired registration and no proof of insurance. Call types, as you would think with the snow, there was 4 accidents, 4 of them, 4 being property damage, 2 then personal injury. 1 animal complaint that was found cat. The burglary was out on Lake Road. That was a residential burglary. Someone broke into a residence and stole a dog. We do have that case taken care of and resolved. That'll be going over to the county attorney's office for prosecution. Disorderly conduct from November involved a intoxicated individual in an apartment complex, a couple of domestics, and again with the winter season, motorist assists will pick up. There's 4 of those. A couple of medical emergencies, and we have tampering with a motor vehicle. That was just somebody who felt their motor vehicle had been gone through overnight. Again, 2 thefts from vehicle. 1 of those involving a wedding ring from a glove compartment, and the other one again, a heater and a shotgun were taken out of a car. There were 45 traffic stops, 4 vehicles in the ditch, and 6 requests for extra patrol.
Any questions? All right, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next item is Planning Commission.
Good evening, Council. We have 2 agenda items for the Planning Commission tonight. The first is the Andrew and Eunice Molitor Trust. And since there's a couple issues on this, I'd actually like to read the staff report. It's more of a brief summary, just so that everybody is on the same page. Andrew and Eunice Molitor Trust, property address is 123rd Avenue in Cold Spring. There's a 3-part request. The first was a rezone 20 acres to rural residential. The second was a request to split 20 acres from a parcel that currently contains 100 acres but is not touching. And the third was to receive approval to build a house on the easternmost area of that parcel that may or may not require a 700-foot feedlot buffer. Relevant information is this property currently contains 100 acres more or less. There was 10 notices of public hearing that were sent out. We did have 1 letter of concern, not totally against, but of concern, mainly with the rezone. And then we had a couple of neighbors address the feedlot buffer, some questions on that. These 2 properties are currently not contiguous, but they are on 1 parcel identification number for tax purposes. Apparently something that was done years ago. So it's kind of a unique situation there. The owners were looking to retire and possibly sell off some of their property to generate some revenue. The feedlot that was in question, there's actually 2. One currently owned by Jerry Tipple, and the other one formerly owned by Doug Hodell, now Jesse Johnson. The area of the proposed structure that would be built is potentially cropped, so then that was an issue. We added this on our bus tour. A couple of you were on there, and if you remember right, we stopped and took a little look. This was a really tough one for the planning commission. There was concern about which way we went on all three of those issues, but I think that we worked together with the owners and at our last meeting came up with a deny of the rezone, and what we like to do instead is to keep it zoned Ag 40 and do allow the 20 acres to be split, and then do a deed restriction against 20 acres of the 100 acres. If you guys remember, we used to do this all the time. About 5 or 6 years ago, we changed it so that the property needed to be contiguous. The reason we did that is because we, at that time, had people buying property on the total other end of the city, and that kind of defeated the purpose. I feel that I would just as soon, or my commission just as soon, see us go back to using that on this one, since the property is only split by another homestead that was kind of put in the middle of this property. Plus, it would allow the Molitors to do what they want to do, which is to split off that 20 acres. Currently, because it's 100 acres, as you know, they have 2 building entitlements. They would still currently, or if the proposal went through, have 2 building entitlements, one on the new PID number and then their existing home. It would steer us away from doing the rural residential, which could potentially in the future be broken down into smaller lots. So we recommend denying the rezone, but allowing the acreage to be split with the new parcel identification with a deed restriction against 20 acres of the home site. The variance would be that would be non-contiguous. And then the third part is that we'd like to see the feedlot identified on the deed and then potential building sites. Actually, there's 2 of them that we've established that we would like to be put on the deed so that they could market this. And then it would be up to, of course, whoever purchased that property to come to us to get a final site plan. But at least they would have the feedlots identified on the new 20-acre parcel.
So is it 20 acres geographically split from the other 80
Yes,
now?
it is.
Okay.
Tony, how did you think about the issue, because we have the right to farm?
Yep.
Since this is being farmed, how did that factor into the thinking on this?
This is actually not being really farmed. It's mainly cropland and some wetland. It's just the overlay, the feedlot overlay, the 700 feet is where it interferes. So we would just need to make sure that we're allowing, or that we're making sure that when they're marketing that potential buyers understand that.
And there is room for a building site.
There's actually 2 identified.
It doesn't require a variance from the feedlot.
Yes,
Yes, it does.
Okay.
well, it does, but it's in the allowable. It's allowable. I mean, it'd be okay. Far enough away from what they're utilizing now.
They want final approval on the site plan before it is built.
Yes.
Okay.
We'd need to do that with any property anyway.
So you got 1 building entitlement going with the 20 acres and 1 staying with the 80?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And a deed restriction on 20 acres of the 80.
Yes.
Correct.
Because really, they need 40 acres to have a
Egg
buildable
40.
site.
Have an Egg 40
Egg
overlay.
40.
Yeah. The deed restriction being the 1 building entitlement? Or
Right.
not?
We used to do this all the time, but what they do is they actually put a deed restriction right on, it would be right on the homestead, the 80
So people
acres.
know that there's only 1 building entitlement instead
Right.
of 2?
Right,
Okay.
Right.
because then potentially they would only have 60, so they wouldn't have enough to divide again.
Right, okay. I guess I don't see any issues there.
fine with that.
I would make a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation to have it remain Ag 40, the deed restriction on the other 20 acres. And is there another part of that?
Identify the feedlot.
Identify the feedlot.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman, I need to share that I will abstain from voting in this particular case because of potential conflict of interest. Andy and Eunice Molitor happens to be my mother-in-law and father-in-law, or Eunice and Andy happen to be my mother-in-law and father-in-law.
So in order, a motion been made second, Don, you got something?
Was there anything brought up, isn't there a wetland going through there? Was there any mention of that? Because I remember years when there's a lot of water that really goes through and it sits for a while. Was there any concern raised on that? Because would that affect the potential septic or well sites?
It's all identified, and what we're acting upon right now, no, because they would need to come with a site plan. So that's where we would need to make an approval on any site plan when it sells, so.
Could you add the variance from the feedlot? Or you said identified feedlots?
Identified the
That is
feedlot.
your variance, okay.
Okay, motion been made and second to approve the three,
I got one question. Will that be in all this written up deed restriction regards to variance for the feedlot too? So every potential buyer and the seller is also aware that if you're going there that they're selling, they aren't informed, all of a sudden you got these orders and everybody's
Yep.
in an uproar.
Exactly, that's
And-
exactly what
Okay,
we wanna make sure happens, is
Okay.
that they're quite aware of that.
okay.
And I have to let you know too that the feedlot, that's of the main concern, which is the tipple feedlot, is only used for about 3 months out of the year, so. I mean, as far as odor. Okay.
okay, motion, again, a motion been made and second to approve the three requested actions on the Molitor property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Dwayne abstained.
Dwayne abstains.
Our second item of business was the Roth request, 11190 Grand Lake Road. It's Michael Roth. And he's requesting to construct a 10 by 12 unattached accessory structure and to locate it within the 50-foot shore impact zone abutting Grand Lake, which is a general development lake. If approved, the impervious surface would exceed what's allowed at 21%, so it would go over by 1% or 186 square feet. So not huge, but the main concern on this one is he wants to locate it 15 feet from the ordinary high water level. As you're aware, we like to see the 50-foot setback. Just tonight I was handed, do they have this, Rena?
Yeah.
This one was really hard for the planning commission too, because we're passionate about maintaining that 50 feet whenever possible. But if you look at the map that was given to you tonight, if you notice the blue lines, what he's proposing to do, and where he's proposing to put the shed would maintain the same flow as all of his neighboring properties. We looked at his proposal, and it's kind of hidden by, the shed would be kind of hidden by some trees. If we made him go too much further back, it would be more into his yard. It would actually infringe more on neighbors' views. So after looking at it, the planning commission agreed to recommend allowing him to do that 15 feet, with the understanding that when it comes time to build, he'll push it back if he can without infringing on the neighbors' visual aesthetics.
I'm not following you when it comes time to build, what do you mean?
If we approve of the building, it's a 10 by 12 accessory structure that he's building,
Okay,
wants to build. A freestanding accessory structure.
That's a shed, a movable
Yeah,
shed.
a movable
Without
shed.
a foundation.
Right. That he wants to locate in the shore impact zone.
15 feet, but then you made a statement, you would ask him to move it back further?
We want him, when it comes time, if if it can go back a little further, that's what we would prefer, because right now 50 feet is what our ordinance calls
Right.
for. But that's why we gave you this.
Explain
None of
those,
none of the neighbors are within that 50 feet, because it used to be
right.
much, much less.
Explain, we're looking at 11190, there's 3
Yep.
blue lines on there, right? By looking at the same one?
Yeah.
The short one is 15 feet,
Yes.
Right,
the next line
is
is,
the 50-foot shore impact zone.
okay, what's the middle line distance?
I think isn't that the one that's closest to the neighbor?
Yep.
The middle one is where the neighbor has their closest structure to the lake?
No, that's the 50-foot.
That's 50 foot.
That's the 50.
Okay, what's the longest one then?
That's where the neighbors is. The neighbor on the right-hand side,
Their house,
they have a shed
or
there.
have a shed that far back?
I guess the question I have, I mean, if we're using as a gauge where neighbors are, I mean, those were done at a time when we had a different ordinance.
Right?
Our goal is to try to improve what we're doing on the lakes. So to me, using that as a gauge for whether we grant it or not is totally opposite of why we put in the ordinance we currently have and the work we're trying to do to improve what we're doing on the lakes. And I guess when I look at it, it seems to me, if you even look at that 50-foot line, there's quite a bit of space there. And so it seems to me that there would be room to move it somewhere else other than 15 feet from the lake.
We struggled with that too.
I mean, really, because if our gauge is to say do it where it currently exists, well, that different rules were in place, and a lot of lakeshore development was done at a time before they knew the full impacts. So.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, and fellow council members, the reverse of that thought process, and that is if there's an established building line, as has been stated, and many times at the county, when there's an appeals process that they go through, that takes precedence, where they have an established building line. In this given case, they're not going to be attempting to set the very movable building any closer than the established building line. So therefore, the impact is going to be the same on the shore if it's sitting there or 10 feet away from the shore. So the impact amount is still the same in terms of the watershed district or other people that are concerned about water, as most people are. So I think at this point, the recommendation that I hear is to allow that 10 by 12, it's not a large building, but to allow it to have the least impediment to the ambiance of neighbors, irrelevant to where it's going to be. So I would strongly suggest that we stay with that thought process as is proposed on the building layout. A bigger concern is that I have, and that is the amount of square footage of impervious soil. And I don't know if that's been addressed or if that's going to be continued to be addressed.
Yep, it's 1% over, so it's 186 square feet, and, we'd work with him on stormwater management on that, a rain barrel or something, and he's quite aware, we talked to him about that, so.
Tony, I'm looking at 11212, which would be to the left, if you're looking at the picture. Looks like there's a structure down by the water, close to that 15-foot.
Correct.
And then I look on the other side of the property, 11168.
Yep.
Is there a structure down there that I don't see? Down by the water?
The one that he has it's in the,
It's in the woods.
it's in
There's
the woods, and it's in the
right?
trees, you can't see it.
Oh,
Because we discussed that with him too, it's really refreshing to hear council, because this is exactly where we were at.
I guess my question would be though, so the next person who comes and wants to put one within 15 feet of the shoreline, and if we're saying, well, because somebody else has it, we'd grant it, what's our rationale for not granting the next one? I guess
Well-
I'm wondering why we developed the ordinance
I know.
that we have, and so I mean, there's so much more data now on the impacts on the lake by having it, that's the reason they have setbacks. So, I mean, I will just say, I'm not in favor of having it within the 15 feet.
Sue, maybe I could did I hear you just say 15 feet from the water line or 15 feet from the ordinary high water?
15 from the ordinary high water.
Well, see, and that's a very distinct difference between the ordinary high water, the OHW, and the actual, where the impact of the water is temporary. This is the highest recorded spot is the OHW, and we're still 15 feet, or the recommendation still to stay 15 feet back from the water of the OHW.
Though mostly it's on Grand Lake, that's probably not a huge difference, because I don't think there's.
It does fluctuate much, yeah, okay, technicality.
Yeah.
I thought I heard you say water, and I was
Well, I
sure
did,
it's
but-
OHW. Somewhat irrelevant.
And comment to Dwayne's, the building line of sight, I don't think that has to do with accessory structures or boathouses or anything. I think that's with the residents. And
Of a
so,
permanent structure,
yeah, I don't think we can,
because this was
Stretch that.
movable.
yeah, and I just know that the DNR and counties are, very strict on boathouses and whether they let boathouses be rebuilt, and they're trying to move everything away from the lake as
Yeah.
much as possible. I
Well-
don't think, in general, if you surveyed DNR or half the counties with lakes in them, they would,
Well, here's, now I'm being facetious, but if we called that 10 foot by 12 foot and we decided to call, or the owner in this case decided to call it a fish house, he can put that any place he wants on that. The same principle. You put a stamp on the side of the thing, call it a fish house. The fish house doesn't have to go out on the lake every year. It can stand there perpetuity. So, what's to stop us from doing that? We're trying to make it as feasible as we possibly can, the most logical spot that the neighbors probably have had him chat with and talk about. And then I see another one, if you look over another two, at 112811128, it looks like another structure very, very, very close to the water line. That's probably been established for some time.
Right, but just because it's been there doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do now.
That is
I mean,
true.
there's a reason we went to the ordinances we have now. So I would make a motion to deny the request to put it there. And I would say, it's a 1% over the impervious surface. If they want to move it back, I would grant the 1% variance, but not located within the 50 feet.
Those really are two separate items. One of them is the impervious soil, and the other one is, so for me, it's tough to have that in the same vein or something like that. I guess the 1% is not insurmountable, because a simple rain barrel will take care of that. I'd prefer to see in the depression in the ground and have retention, but that's just a more recent learning experience I am with the watershed district. So,
well, I think the point is that they both require variances, Dwayne, so it's taking care of one of the issues. Sue's motion allows the impervious surface requirement to be varied from, but not the building setback. And, I gotta say, I agree. I mean, I don't know technically what the difference between this and putting a boathouse there. I mean, and I just know how the DNR and everybody feels about structures that close to the lake.
I just, what he had said is, I think what I always hear, the whole idea of having a fish house down there, is it any different? And that's, if it's a movable structure and stuff, it just brings up a different set of thinking, I think. If you have a building down there, whether or not it's movable or immovable, does that make a difference? It's still gonna be down there.
yeah. I want to make it on record, I don't propose that that's a standard in the industry that we should accept. I mean, that's just being facetious on the statement. I was just using that as an illustration. I never want to go and consider having somebody think that they can put a fish house out there and leave it at the edge of the water forever and ever. That's a bigger detriment. I don't know if there was a second on
I guess
Sue's motion.
I think it's an issue that we need to put to a vote, and I will second Sue's motion to deny placing it 15 feet from the water, allowing it to be placed at least 50 feet from the water, and
Please say from the ordinary high water mark.
Yes.
50 feet from the ordinary high water mark, right? And allow this 21% impervious area. So,
Was, before we vote on that, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, was there a recommendation from the planning and zoning group to accept the 15, or what was the recommendation? Okay.
And just so you know, like I said, I think we struggled with the same thing, but I think the fact that it would be allowable under the counties, and because of the neighbors having the same factors, is kind of what swayed our decision, but
that makes
you
sense?
guys you're the decision makers.
No,
so
I mean,
I'll let
I
you
just-
get back to,
I think we spent a lot of time working on our ordinance, and the fact that something exists that was done before that was in place, I mean, that's what we're trying to right by having our ordinance, is to not have buildings that close to the water, because we now know the impacts. So, I mean, I just disagree. It'd be one thing if there was no other place to put it, but I think I think there is room to put it somewhere else.
Was there a discussion on what the shed would be used for and why it's critical to be this distance? I'm assuming it's to put stuff from the boat or
Yeah.
whatever, and so we're talking about walking 35 feet more?
yeah. Well, and I think that when we discussed moving it back, he was more concerned about the neighbors. The 3 or 4 other places, it would have infringed more on the neighbors.
If it was 50?
If it was back further, yes.
Infringed because of,
Just
Sight
the
line.
site,
Sight line?
of the neighbor's view of the lake.
presuming they sit in one spot and watch. I mean, sight lines are
Right.
move with when the person moves, okay. Well, I think we should do a roll call vote. I'll start with Sue. In favor would mean denying the 15-foot location,
Aye.
requiring 50 feet. Aye, Dwayne, or Don, sorry.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion fails, 3-2.
To further it along, I make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the planning and zoning, a recommendation to allow it within 15 feet. And hopefully I get a second so we can discuss that.
I'll second it.
Motion been made second, we'll do a roll call, start with Dwayne this time.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit, I'm actually gonna vote against this one too, because I don't think 15 feet is fair. But I think there's something in between that I would be for, between the 15 and 50. I've always felt like 50 is quite a bit, and that's why I voted that way.
Yep.
Okay, Dwayne?
Yes, thank you, Randy, for the second so that we can have a motion or a discussion on it. Parliamentary procedure, if you don't have a second, it dies. So having said that, the primary reason I feel compelled that it is an appropriate decision that the planning and zoning made, and why I feel compelled that we should, and that's there are personal property rights that individuals have. And at this stage of the game, based in front of me, the information does not see where it's going to be an impediment to the quality of the lake wherever it sets. If it's 15 feet away or 50 feet away or something like that, in my humble opinion, that is not going to make a difference. So I hope that the balance of the council members sees the validity in my motion to go with the recommendation of the council.
Well, Councilmember Willenbring, there is a reason I think the DNR sets the 50-foot setback on general development, and it's further back on other types of lakes. And, I mean, I disagree that there's no difference in terms of how close you are to the lake or the amount of, impervious surface that's being covered. I mean, there was a lot of thought that went into our ordinance in developing it. And I don't think that actually 50 feet back is a hardship.
So to further the discussion, Dwayne, and others that have voted for the 15 feet, so if everybody on the lake wanted to put a structure within 15 feet, we'd be okay with it?
Only if there was an established building line.
And I would not be in favor of, I think 15 feet is too close. I think there is a medium, and I remember, we discussed this 5-6 years ago, the 50 feet I felt was too much for unbuildable. But I think 15 feet is pushing pretty close.
But Dwayne, okay, so if you establish a building line with an accessory structure that's close to the water, you've got a round lake. that means eventually everybody could have a structure there.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is continue it down the line from one, and then you'd have one everywhere.
And I think we're, splitting hairs here, Mr. Mayor, but quite frankly, I see your thought process, and rightfully so. We don't want to have that happen. And in this given case, is there a true building line established? If I look at the one that's immediately to the left, it does look like there is something there. To the right, it's at the 11168. Allegedly a building hiding in the woods someplace that's also very, very close. That's why I'm using that as a for instance. So if we go onto a different side of the lake and we don't have those, I would certainly not be the same way that I'm talking right now or something like that. But in this particular case, based on all the other things that are alluded to, and that's line of sight of the current established owners of homes that are there, and if they all agree that it's the right thing to do, and it's somewhat movable, so that if in the future a neighbor comes along and says, well, I don't like where it's at, if the owner is user-friendly, he'll say, help me decide where it is that I should be away from it so that I have my line of sight. Sometimes the city council shouldn't have their dog in a fight that they're not should be involved in, and this happens to be one of those cases. It's very flexible. It'd take a 10 by 12 building to move it around on that site or something like that. I don't think is a major hurdle. And so I stand with the motion. If it dies, it dies. I'm ready for it.
Motion's been second, and we're gonna do a roll call vote. We'll start with you, Dwayne.
Yep, I'll vote for an aye, 15 feet at the recommendation of the commission.
Okay, Randy?
Nay.
I go nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails, 3-2. So,
Is there a time to table it for a month? Nothing will change, correct? I mean, if we decided to not do it, because neither one of the two motions went anyplace.
Yep.
I don't know if
See,
that's.
Mike's here, do you wanna come?
Yeah,
That's
give the
everything to
privilege.
say to add, maybe get it off center, otherwise you don't feel like you have to, just 'cause.
There is the 60-day rule that we would have to, the 60-day rule would probably come into play here. We'd have to ask for an extension.
Do you know what that is, Tony?
I was trying to
They
see.
were just on for the November meeting.
So we could have.
January.
If a decision wasn't made in 60 days, then protocol is to allow the request of the individual. That is correct.
Yep.
What was the date of the November meeting? Did we go early then?
November 10th?
Well, haven't we already voted on it and said no, in a sense? I mean, right now we're at a no.
But there's
so-
no recommendation.
Well, we're denying it.
Yeah, so far it's been denied.
I mean, so
Officially,
right now, I think the
right.
yeah.
Go ahead, Mike, if you got
Yeah.
something.
I don't know what I've got to add here. The location of the building was really to be the most aesthetically pleasing to everybody involved with regard to the neighbors on either side. And I get your point about the sight line, but typically they're sitting on their deck or whatever, so I'm looking at that as the main sight line. I'm willing to comply with the water barrels or whatever you need to do to catch the water off of it. So I'm not quite seeing what the major impact is on the shoreline. I am going to comply, I do want to comply with the county ordinances, so. Other than that, it's not, to be honest, it's not life or death if I get this building or not, so I'm not going to go storming out of here and make a big hissy fit about it. It just would be nice to have in that location from a convenience standpoint and from an aesthetic standpoint.
Since he's up here, we did talk about the one other site which was close to your patio, but didn't you say that that was even more of a detriment on that neighbor?
It's not a level site, so it's a little harder to put it on,
Right.
things like that.
We did do due diligence, trying to rearrange, a spot that he could meet that. And, because of course we had no problem with the 1%. We knew that that would be, compliable to deal with the 1%, but that's where our commission ended up, is right back to what I presented. And trust me, I'm just as sensitive about the short end. I sat there for 2.5 years, every week, doing our new short end ordinance, so I'm passionate about making it work, and I'm proud of what we've done with it, so.
Mike, does 25 feet, I feel like 15 feet is just too close. 25 feet I feel like is probably the absolute minimum that I could adhere to. Where does that put it on, is there anything there that would be, you can't really tell if there's trees there or anything like that, or?
There's a clump of trees probably about there, but it's not the end of the world. It puts it more in the middle of the yard than it does on the edge where the landscaping and natural vegetation is that I planted already. It's kind of nestled in with some tall grasses and some of that shoreland stuff we did several years ago.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept it at 25 feet with all the other stipulations that were presented. Let it die then.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion been made second to approve the location at 25 feet from the ordinary high water mark. Just to be fair, we'll do a roll call, start with Sue this time.
I say nay.
Aye.
Hey,
Aye.
I'm gonna vote nay.
Well,
the motion's denied, 3-2. I guess I'll make a motion, we send it back to the planning commission and try to work out something that the council is likely to pass.
Great move, I'll second that.
Motion been made and second to send the variance request back to the planning commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Good luck, Tony.
Can I just say?
It's not gonna be me, so.
Go ahead, Sue.
Jeff, I sort of agree with, if the rationale is because the neighbor has it there, so if 11168 or 5, whatever that number is, says they want to move theirs, they have one, move it closer, then the next neighbor does. It is then I guess we have to question why we even had the ordinance, and there was a rationale for the 50-foot setback. We have done a lot of work to try to clean up the lakes that are in the city and to keep them clean. So I just ask that we take that into consideration. We're not trying to be difficult with the property owners, but I think the effort's being made on the lakes, and there is an impact. The data out there would suggest that. And Dwayne, you sit on the Sauk River watershed.
That's,
I don't think they'd say put it within 15 feet.
that does not enter into our purview of the venue that we have. But, Sue, you have oversight of the planning and zoning, and you also have that lobbying capabilities in that oversight position, though you don't have a vote. And I think there's a compromise that can be reached, and hopefully that it doesn't even take council action. I think this is something that should be able to be worked out amongst a couple of the neighborhood people and let a sleeping dog lie.
For what it's worth, I do appraisals on lake property in a lot of counties, and I can't see this being allowed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a property on Leech Lake, that's a 115,000 acre lake, and it's 75 feet. They would not let this go, so whatever. Okay, anything else, Tony?
No.
Thank you. Park and Rec.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott Stenseth, Rockville Park and Rec with our annual 2014 year in review. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. We had another really good year for Rockville Park and Rec. Starting out at the beginning of the year, despite the heavy snow and bitterly cold winter, we did our best to keep the hockey rink at Community Park iced. With snow and cold, it was an uphill battle all year, but I would like to thank the city staff and volunteers who did their best to keep it iced. In the spring, we again had our annual Easter egg hunt. The weather was nice and we had over 230 participants. collected around 160 pounds of food for the Cold Spring Area Food Shelf. This year's Easter egg hunt will be Saturday, April 4th at 10 a.m. at Lions Park. As always, all are welcome. Lots of activity at Eagles Park this past year. 12 more native prairie plant signs were installed. A shade tree was planted near the picnic table. The road approach was improved. Hundreds of hours were spent removing and spraying for invasive species, as well as cleaning out and moving excessive prairie plants and spreading additional native plant seed. Dozens and dozens of educational tours for school field trips and civic groups were conducted, and thousands of volunteer hours were spent on keeping up the park. A reminder that the majority of what is done in the park has come from donations and grants as well as volunteers. A big thanks to John and Linda Peck, as well as the entire Nature Parks and Trails group for implementing the projects at Eagle Park. Summer ball program again was a great success with over 110 youths participating in softball, baseball, and t-ball. We also had the over 35 league using the ball field during most of the summer. While we had a colder than normal summer, weather cooperated for the most part this year with very few rainouts. Brian Durkee, who has been our summer ball coordinator for the last few years, has moved away. I'd like to thank Brian for his passion and enthusiasm he put into the program. He will truly be missed. Unfortunately, at this time, we do not have a summer ball program coordinator. Without one, we will not have a summer ball program. Assuming we find a person to fill that position, sign up for the 2015 season will be Saturday, March 28th from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock at Rockville City Hall. The rain gardens that were completed in 2013 have been thriving. Plans are in the works for installing educational signs at the City Hall and Lions Park rain gardens. Another big thanks to Paul Worth for helping and coordinating groups to maintain the gardens as well as coordinating the signage installation. Paul's also worked with the Lions and the local Girl Scouts to construct and install bluebird houses at Lions Park. This fall we facilitated the first phase of refurbishing the old Pleasant Lake City Hall at Lions Park by scraping and repainting the exterior of the building. Paul Worth coordinated the county sentenced to serve crew to do the painting. Members of the Park and Rec Board did the scraping. We've had many compliments on the paint job. It really looks a lot nicer. At the same time, we cleaned out many years of accumulated stuff from inside in preparation for phase 2, which will be the installing of some trim, some painting, and replacement of some of the carpet on the inside. Earlier this month, we had a Rockville Santa Day. We again had it at the Rockville Fire Hall. We had over 100 participants. Fun was had by all. We collected around 160 pounds of food and $60 in cash for the Cold Spring Area Food Shelf. A big thanks to the Rockville volunteer firefighters for letting us use the hall and for answering questions on all the equipment and all the other volunteers who helped make this event possible. Over the past year, Park and Rec Board members have provided hundreds of hours of volunteer time, obtained thousands of dollars in grant money, and worked hard to make Rockville a welcoming, family-friendly community. I would like to personally thank our board members for what they do to make Rockville a better place to live. But the Park and Rec Board is down to 3 active members, all from the Pleasant Lake area. We as a group do not think this is sustainable to continue on with this few of members. Our November meeting had exactly 2 members present. We're requesting that the City Council and City staff recruit 3 new active members, preferably not from the Pleasant Lake area. If we have 6 members by the end of April, we will continue to provide the valuable service we have been providing for the City of Rockville. If not, we will hand over all of our duties and responsibilities to the city staff, with the exception of the Easter egg hunt and Santa Day. Any questions?
Thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, have a great
We'll make a plea for more members.
We all really enjoy what we do.
I think it is really, I mean, I hope you know, it is really appreciated and valuable, I think, to the community. So if there is anybody out there who would be interested in serving, I think it's a great committee to be on.
There's a lot of fun. I mean, I know a lot of things that Tony needs to deal with and you guys need to deal with aren't very fun. We have a lot of fun on the Park and Rec Board. We see it too with the events that we do, with everything we do. I mean, we really truly enjoy it, but we're short and we can't continue to go on this way. And this isn't anything that's specific to Rockville. I volunteer in a lot of other things too. It's tough getting volunteers to do it. And typically the way you get people to volunteer is to physically take them by the hand and bring them semi-forcibly to the meeting, and once they get there and they're involved, they'll stick with it. But every event in every newsletter we've had for the last forever, basically, you know, it's like, oh, come and join the Park and Rec Board, way to serve your community, and that just doesn't work. I mean, you need to physically get people to do it, so.
When's your next meeting?
That would be the first Thursday in January.
January 8th, and I'm here from the Park Board also about this situation we're facing coming up next year. We know what it takes to run a park program, and 3 of us can't do it. We're just overwhelmed with everything. We would have to reduce most of what we have down to nothing in order to accomplish just a few things. So we desperately need help with this, and we need your help. We like a diverse board, so we have more input from the total city area instead of just one community. We've been very active in the Pleasant Lake area. Although their parks are spread throughout the city, we have to make decisions on those also. It's best to have input from people from those communities. We don't like to be looking at what we're looking at, but it's realistic.
You always meet on Thursdays?
Pardon me?
You always meet on Thursdays?
Correct, the first Thursday of each month,
Every
yes.
month?
If I could just quickly, I believe, maybe Rena can answer that, there was a email that was circulated, I don't know if it was Scott, if it came from you or if it was from staff. There was a female that was interested. Have you contacted?
Not yet, but she is on the list of things to contact. So.
Okay, so there's someone that had shown enthusiasm, or at least to get additional information?
Before, so we'd only need 2 more.
Okay, and I have, as I shared with you, I have an individual that I have talked to that left the area and has moved back into Rockville, and he is needs just a little bit more time, but I'll be twisting his arm in very short order. So he'd be a great attribute, and he's not from that area, he's from the core city.
Are you going to be, is this other individual from Pleasant Lake area that you're talking about? This lady?
The female lady,
I'm not sure, they didn't have a lot of information. I got an email with the phone number.
All right, because there's one that has talked to me as well. I think she was going to talk with you in the next month or 2. She's just moving into the area, so.
Okay.
So you meet at 7 o'clock, right?
Well, she is from Pleasant Lake, so.
As long as we get 6 members, we're good.
and Scott, I heard you loud and clear.
7 o'clock, first Thursday of each month, yes.
And usually then, as oversight, there's a few months in the summer that we don't have meetings.
July 4th, we typically, or the July, we don't typically meet July.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you. Next item is Fire Department, request for action, boat, truck repair, and tires.
Mayor and council, before you tonight, I sat down with both Rodney Schaefer and Andrew to go over all of these 3 requests. I actually typed it up for them, but then we also discussed writing these up in the future, being complete so that that is addressed. Number 1 was the $4,241.67. That was their first time that we paid a bill for the truck repairs from emergency apparatus, and this is actually how it got paid. Where we paid it out of designated funds, using $2,000 out of fire department operations and $408 out of designated fire department meeting mileage. We had some money in the budget already, so that's what's needed on that one.
Okay, you want these approved individually, or?
Yeah, or do you want to do them all together?
Let's do them all. Let's do them all.
Okay. Next one was on the next one was also on the fire trucks. They figure they have about $9,000 left. If they want, they've been putting off a lot of repairs over the years. One of them has a head gasket, leaky head gasket. That is engine number 2. That alone was $6,565 plus travel. Tanker number 3, it's just normal maintenance. That has $761 plus travel. Engine number 5, that one's $5,700 $5. This one they feel is not worth fixing, it just needs to be replaced. So, under that, we had the funding, we're planning to take the money out of that. And the rescue van actually needs 4 new tires, we included that on there as well. Wait, what do I got, 3? Those tires are $822, so total budget amendment would be $19,166.
Also move to accept the budget requests.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and second to approve the fire department's request for action on these repairs. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, before we leave this, I think would be an appropriate time, and I think it's worthy of sharing. The Lions did bring up $1,000.
Yeah, that's my next one.
Oh, go ahead, Rena, I shouldn't take your thunder.
Jumped ahead of me.
Okay.
Go ahead,
The
Rena.
next one was on that boat that they bought
Okay.
last month, and at that time, you didn't have any idea of how that was getting paid out of what. So we sat down and figured out where it's gonna get paid out of. And yes, Member Willenbring is pointing out that the Rockville Lions Club did donate $1,000 to the department. So that reduced the price, to $6,707.95. And that's your last request for council action on that.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Motion made second to approve the purchase of the motor, acceptance of $1,000 donation from the Lions Club. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Then on the request for council action from Nick, you know, at the beginning of the year, you authorized spending $115,000 totally to purchase a Bobcat, a white Chevy pickup truck, and also a snowplow. This document that you have here just was amended today to include all of it. And we're still under the 115 by about $10,000. So this was quite convoluted, but it works. Trust me, it works.
So you need a motion approving this.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second to approve, set of purchase and accounting for the pickup, Bobcat, and accessories. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. So there isn't a specific request for snowplow here, or not?
The
This is just
snowplow
all
is
under
in
snowplow.
this.
Okay.
That's in here. That was
Okay.
$66,007 plus $4,313 for the use tax,
Okay.
excise tax. All right?
I guess we'll just continue since we're 40 minutes beyond the public meeting, approximate start time. Unfinished new business, Rinky Noonan, attorney contract renewal.
I had indicated to you where the increases were in their hourly rate. So, this is their rate proposal.
Do we have to accept that, or I mean, or do you need a motion on that?
You need a motion on that.
Also move to accept.
I'll second it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
A motion been made and second to approve the renewal of the attorney contract with Rinky Noonan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item is the Rockville Lions Club gambling license application.
You said Bugs and Buddy Pub and Grub, the new place over here that Mark Schneider took over. And that's the resolution they need to have.
Move to advance the resolution number 2014-23.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second to approve the Rockville Lions Club gambling license at Bugs and Buddy Pub and Grill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item is the third-party contractors policy. We have a amended document from our attorney.
We make a motion to approve the policy for, as amended by the attorney.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second to approve the the policy on contacting third-party contractors. All in favor, say aye.
Just a little bit of discussion,
Go ahead,
please, if I
Glenn.
may, very quickly. The administrator clerk has authority to contact the city only when necessary, and I think, not necessarily tonight, but I think it's wise for the council to just set some specific parameters so that it's established someplace, because it leaves it a little vague at this stage of the game, and quite frankly, in a code of conduct, sometimes that is where that ends up, and we just did it with the watershed district, and it worked out rather well. So just, if we can do that and leave it on the table, that maybe we can have staff say, in this particular case, are we or are we not allowed, okay?
To be adopted further down the road. is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
just let's
Okay.
clean it up a bit. I think that there's certain times when the clerk needs to be able to contact legal counsel. That's just the cost of doing business in the city, but within parameters. And I think if we establish those parameters, just a couple of samples, that would give us a little bit more control in that. Not that it's been abused in the past, I'm not suggesting that.
That certainly can be brought back. A motion's been made and second to approve the policy regarding third-party contractors. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same, motion passes. Okay, the proposed tax and levy budget doesn't need the public hearing. Should we do that?
It's a public meeting. You're just announcing what we have established. Basically, you have established, or you're approving the same tax levy as we had last year. Has resulted in a 1.83% reduction to citizens.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
Also move to accept resolution 2014-24.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second to approve the 2015 proposed tax levy and budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Okay, we'll do the public hearing on the conservation water rate.
Okay. With that, we're gonna move over here, Judy, will you turn on the... There were copies and available, so if anybody didn't get a copy of the proposed conservation rates, they're back there, the big, long 11 by 17 sheets. Anybody use it? Okay, basically, there's three proposals. The one on your immediate left over here was proposed by Member Willenbring and Council-elect Rick Tallman. Theirs is a uniform conservation rate of $5 per 1,000 gallons across the board, with a minimum of 4,000 gallons, that's 2,000 each month. So that would be $20, 20, 20, 20, 20, you see that? And with the city's finance committee, which they had proposed, is a conservation rate of, the incentive there is to get people to use less water. And what we know to be a fact is that the average household in the city of Rockville uses 8,480 gallons per 2 months. So that was the breaking point there. What we went with was 0 to 2,000 at $2.25 per 1,000 gallons. From 2001 to 84.80, there is $3.45 per 1,000 gallons. That's the incentive to lower your rates. 84.81 to 15,000 is estimated at the $3.55 per 1,000, which is the current rate, and 15,001 over is $3.85 per 1,000. And the third column actually shows the current rate of what we were currently using. Now, the difference collected, if you see that, Judy, can you point to that column? Right there. Yeah, there's a difference between what the city is recommending versus the Tallman-Willenbring recommendation. The totals, if you see that, yep, you're gonna have reductions for the people under the 15,000 or under the 15,000, and then those over 15,000 are definitely gonna be picking up the lion's share of what's needed. The budget for 2015 is 140,000. Yes, Mr. Tallman was right at the open forum. That did include a repairs budget of $32,000. Now, the city's revenue side will come in with 117,000. There are other monies that we collect from different things, penalties and such. The water tower rent transfer, the Honeycomb water transfer, that makes up the 140,000. So what was estimated to be collected under the city's proposal was 117,000. Under the proposal by the Tallman-Willenbring, that's 152,000. So it will make a difference in the end. The one thing I should tell you with the uniform conservation rate, which is the $5 straight across the board, there is a 21-page document that the DNR needs to have that approved. The proposed conservation rate that has been provided by the city has actually been approved by the DNR already. If we all remember, the deadline date is January 1st of 2015. So I guess I leave it up to the city council to decide which way they want to go. Now, Member Palmer, you had asked how many gallons there were in the individual categories. Up to the fourth, well, the total amount of gallons up to what, Judy? Oh, up to 0 to 4,000. Member Palmer, there's 836,062.
Were you able to figure out how many people are in that 4,000 and under gallons?
351, there's 388. Oh, per time. 351 per time, take that times 6, because we bill out 6 times a year.
Divided by 6?
Times 6, right?
We bill it 6 months, 6 times. What I did was take from that top part of this billing one, you guys should have that sheet in front of you.
So how many users do we bill in total, regardless of what category they're in?
388.
Yeah, and
So 3 of the 382, 351 would fall under that 4,000 and under, correct? So going to a flat rate means that most of our users are gonna pay the $20 a month?
No, that's not right. This 351 represents the whole year.
So you gotta divide that by 6 then?
Divided by 6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So basically you're looking at 59 people,
Okay.
so about 15% of them are 4,000 and under. Did I hear you right? You said the Willenbring Tallman proposal would bring in 150.
it's the other way around. It's Tallman Willenbring. He did the lark. We'll give him the most credit.
It was 152,000 in revenue it would bring in?
Yep.
Yeah, and I'd like to get that clarification on that, how that arithmetic works, Rena. Because
We had flat fee of 46,050, 080, 050, and usage of 106,325.56.
simple math, if we have roughly 20 million gallons total that we use in a year, correct? And I think we should have the public speak before we get into the council and making determinations, but just so we all understand it. And if it was $5 and we get 4,000 gallons in that 2-month cycle, and it continues perpetually $5 per every 1,000 gallons thereafter. So it would end up being, simple math, $5 per 1,000 all the way till 2 million gallons, that's $100,000. Right? There's gonna be 20,000 units of 1,000 in 20 million gallons.
Where'd you get the 20 million gallons? Is that what?
That's what it states here. If you look at that copy that came through, unless I'm mistaken, it's just a fraction over 20,000 or 20 million.
I'm sure you're right, I'm just.
20,323,000, but if we're in conservative, hopefully. And I think the other important thing that we have to do is not just 1 year. Did we have an odd year this year, or is there an established? I think it seems to me that in the last couple of years, we've been going down and down. We were 17 million, 18 million, and it looks like this year it's back to 20 million.
I just went through the last 6 billings.
Okay.
I can't tell you
Yeah.
what started in
Yeah.
March
But, but am I correct in saying 20 million as a rough number? And if you take 20 million and divide that by 1,000, that's 20,000.
102.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the 152,000, there's gotta be an error there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Dwayne's probably accurate that I think probably him and Rick put together something that's pretty close to the city.
About 100,000, I think, is what Rick had, and quite frankly, we should let Rick share. I think he's asked for some time, but then I did a follow-up, did a lot of number crunching, and I do have another concept, but let's have the public and give us information first, staff.
I mean, if you don't have anything else, I think we can assume that the 152 is not accurate. It's probably something pretty close to the
100,000.
100 to 117,000. And then I think we can take public input and then further explanation from Rick or Dwayne on the particular. So can we turn the lights back on? I don't think we need to. Does anybody else? I don't think we need to look at that. It's probably not that readable anyway.
I could use that.
Okay, go ahead, leave it on then.
Well, the reason we came up with this flat rate system was that's what Wake Park does. Wake Park has a rate of $5.47 per 1,000 gallons with a 3,000 gallon a month minimum. That way everybody pays the same rate, and that is the whole reason that this was even brought up. And the reason we came up with the $5 per 1,000 gallons last year when the water rate study was done, it showed the city's cost to produce each 1,000 gallons is $4.96. For the simple reason of making it simple, we just rounded it to $5. So then in that water rate study, it also showed that the city needs to collect $9.54 per month for their base fees to cover the fixed expenses. Make it round simple numbers, we just made that $10, 2,000 gallon per month minimum, $5 for each gallon. The reason being, currently, the city's current rates and the proposed tiered rates allow people, once they reach a certain level, to buy water at a lower cost than the city's cost to produce it. And you can't operate a business. If the Water Enterprise Fund has to operate as a separate business, I don't think anybody would be in business selling their product lower than their cost to produce it. It just doesn't make sense. And the rates are supposed to be just and equitable for everybody. Just meaning fair, equitable meaning fair to everyone, equally fair to everyone. So that's the reason that this all came about. What we have here, this is the proposed plan with the city at 1,000 gallons, I always wanted to use my laser pen, so at 1,000 gallons, 1908 is the base fee, $225 per 1,000 gallons. A person would pay $21.33 for 1,000 gallons. This is in a 2-month billing period. So somebody conserving, somebody living alone, or there are in the papers that the city has here put together, city staff has put together, there are people that do this. I think Mr. Zwilling, you're one of them, that you use very low amount of water. So you end up paying $21.33 for 1,000 gallons of water. Whereas you start getting up into the higher points here, it's hard to get everything on here. You get up here at 16,000 gallons, they're paying $61.60 for 16,000 gallons. Their total cost for that is $5.04 per 1,000 gallons. Anyway, the rates that you end up paying, your actual cost for each 1,000 gallons goes down the more you use. And once you start getting down here, that's less than the city's cost to produce it. That's the whole reason that we're coming up with a plan that makes it fair. Just doesn't seem fair that anybody should be able to buy it less than the city's cost to produce it. And with the plan we're proposing, everybody pays the same. We could even get a little bit fairer for the top people here. If you were able to get back into the actual numbers, take actual figures and go through a little more detail. This was just kind of thrown together with the water rate study figures from last year. But once you get past the 4,000 gallons, everybody pays $5. Their actual cost is $5 for every 1,000 gallons are used. That's the incentive to save. Every 1,000 gallons you use less, you save another $5. It's a pretty simple concept to save money to use less. And you got your comparing the actual plans. This is the current rates. This is the proposed one by the city with the tiered rates. And this would be our plan with, this is actual cost. How many 1,000 gallons you use, how much money do you take out of your pocket to pay for each 1,000 gallons. This comes out $5. These ones, it starts getting lower than the city's cost to produce it. And how much would this actually save on a bill? Currently, $22.63 for 1,000. The proposed ordinance would be $21.33. A person would save $1.30. Under our plan, you would save $2.63. Under this one, at 2,000, you'd save $2.60. Our plan would be $6.18. So you start getting here. Where does it start changing? Right here at 14,000 gallons. Those people actually start paying a little bit more. At 14,000 gallons, they pay $1.22 more. But remember, these are the folks that have been paying less than the city's cost to produce it. Anybody that would like copies of these plans, I'll be willing to email them to you. I did not make copies of all this. We have to remember what it says about securing payment of water utilities. Municipal water rates operate as a separate enterprise or like a private business to pay for the entire system. They may impose just and equitable charges for their services. Rates in general. Services must be nearly as possible proportionate to the cost of furnishing the service, even if the local charter provides otherwise. The amended law also pushes the deadline back for the water conservation to January 1st, 2015. But you have to remember, this January 1st, 2015 deadline is only if you're looking to get funding to do certain things to your water system. I don't hear any funding that you're looking for to do anything on the system. So pushing it back a month or so is not gonna make a difference at all. And also, remember, this is also under the water conservation part. This is up under the water conservation part, goes on to say, rates must not go down based on increased consumption. I just showed you, when you calculate out the bills, and you take and figure out how many thousand gallons you're buying, and how much money you're taking out of your pocket to pay for those thousands, your rates are going down. For each 1,000 gallons you're using, you're paying less for each 1,000 gallons when you start using over 14,000 gallons. Under the proposed ones, not under our plan. And they keep going on. Rates, however, must be also just and equitable, reasonable, proportionate. And here's where they say it is allowed. Cities may charge based on water consumed. You can charge flat rates. So it's not like it can't be done. Wake Park is already doing it. And here's what some of the water rate increases have been. 2014, or 2004, 6, 8, 9, 10, 13. These are all the rates that have been going up. But all of these have been during the time before 2013 when the city was paying zero for their water. There's been a grave injustice done to the water customers in the city. The city is the largest user of water on this separate entity, the separate water enterprise. The city has not paid prior to 2013. They started paying in 2013. There was a grave injustice done to the water customers that have been paying for all that public use water. Public use water is defined in the statutes. That's where they have to pay sales tax on that. You have to, the actual statutes demand reduction, doesn't show up. Demand reduction measures must include a water conservation rate or a uniform rate structure with a conservation program. The whole idea is to get people to use less water. And it's been pointed out before that if a conservation rate is applied to multifamily dwellings, the rate structure must consider each residential unit as an individual user. And that's for the simple fact that in a multifamily unit, 4, 6, 12 units, whatever, obviously they're going to use a lot more water than an individual home. So if you have a tiered system and you're going to have whatever amount of water you use in that billing period, say you're at 50,000 gallons under the rate tier that is being proposed by the city, you will pay that higher rate for all of those gallons. I hope everybody can understand that the flat $5 fee brings fairness into the system. It promotes conservation because you save for every 1,000 gallons you cut back. You save money right out of your pocket. It's like when at a gas station buying 10 gallons or you're buying 2 gallons. You're going to pay for 2. Any questions?
I guess I do have a question. I brought it up to you earlier. The cost to produce, can you define that?
The cost to produce 1,000 gallons was in the 2013 water rate study.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I got that page here. That showed up as $4.96 for each 1,000 gallons. That was.
Is it not made up of the base water meter fee plus the amount on average collected on the variable rate charge?
It was made up of the entire operating cost, base
Right.
fees and all of the water.
Variable, right. So, and I think that was 110,000, so this year, we're gonna budget 140,000 because we're budgeting extra for standpipe or whatever other work is in that extra. So, and I think that comes to like $6 if you do the same calculation that you did or took from the study at 496,000. Now that becomes 630, 631. So do you still, I mean, is it still proper to make the argument that now the water is costing the city, instead of 496 a gallon to produce, now it's costing 631 when all that's changed is that we've budgeted for a capital replacement item? Or is it more accurate to say after your fixed costs are covered, which we charge a base fee and you propose a $10, that the true cost of producing the next gallon of water, the marginal cost of producing that is something much less. It should not include the base water meter amount. It's actually not costing the city that fixed expense for every gallon. The fixed expenses are gonna be there whether we produce a gallon of water or not, in theory. So the true cost of producing another gallon of water is a fraction of the 496. And then, so our incentive to get people to conserve has to be something that increases with some sort of tier.
Well, it doesn't have to be. That's why I brought up the Wade Park system. The Wade Park system has very similar to what we're proposing. 547 per 1,000 gallons across the board with a 3,000 gallon per month minimum.
Yeah.
That's how they achieve their fixed expenses. I agree with your thinking. The fixed expenses, I think, were a little bit skewed. Dwayne and I have looked over the fixed expense part of that water rate study, and we don't agree with a lot of the items that were in the fixed expenses to the point they were. We believe that the fixed expenses are if you turned off the water and you did not sell a drop of water, the expenses to keep the system in place are your true fixed expenses.
But I believe under that, we did not even put, and I thought I had it with me, the full amount of debt service under that as a fixed cost. And that surely is a fixed expense. So you can say you disagree, but I think that the fixed expense is actually probably understated from what we actually had. And I just want to address two other issues. One, when you say the city is the largest user and they haven't been paying for it and it's a grave injustice, I just want to say, go on record, first of all, the city hall, we heard earlier, uses very little water. Most of the rest of the unaccounted water is actually for flushing, whatever, maintenance of the system, which, keep in mind, not every resident in this city has access to city water. So in fact, the part that the city is paying for to the water fund is being charged to every taxpayer, and there's a significant portion of the taxpayers in this city who do not get any benefit from city water. So, you can say that, but when they weren't paying for it, in fact, it was the system, the water system that was using it, not the amount of water. And I just want that clarified because I think that that's not actually a very accurate statement and a misperception to the public. Well, my other one is just on the, when you talk about fair and just water rates, there are many cities, you cited Wade Park, but there are many cities who charge a base rate and a cost per gallon. And I'm actually not sure I see in your example why charging $5 per 1,000 gallons is an incentive to conserve. I mean, you're saying just use less and you'll pay less, but that's true now. You're gonna not pay whatever we charge per gallon now. If you use less, you're not gonna pay that. So I don't actually think, I guess I'm trying to clarify because I thought the intent of the conservation rate was actually a greater incentive than just avoiding what the regular rate is. It was to have a rate that was actually a disincentive.
Well, I'll get to the mic here. What you're saying as far as the water rate study with the expenses that were in there last year, you're correct. The the amount that was put on as far as the debt service, yes, there was not the fixed cost amount there, but you have to remember that water rate study included a principal debt service of $64,000 and an interest expense of $1,676. When I did an open records request, a data request, those numbers were actually $48,000, not $65,000 in total debt service.
But that was
interest.
corrected, Rick.
That was corrected, and that went into the repairs and maintenance budget, went from $8,000 to $25,000. And that's what I was pointing out earlier at the open forum. You're wanting to increase the repairs and maintenance budget to $32,000 this year, when of the $25,000 that it was raised up to from $8,000, only $11,000 of that has been spent this year.
But keep in mind, when
She
you,
just said that 8,000 more is going from Kramer, so it's 19,000.
but can I
It's an
just,
estimate. She doesn't have that bill yet. We don't know what it is.
when you set a budget, it is just that. You're budgeting for what? We can't predict exactly when something's gonna break or we need do a repair. You
Right.
set a budget at what you expect will happen, but what happens is you go back and you look at your actual costs, and that's factored in when we look at where is the water fund? Do we have a shortfall? Do we have an excess? So in fact, if we don't spend it all, that's great. It means when you look at the rates again, you either have to increase it less, or you can perhaps even lower it if for some reason the cost came in significantly different, because
How many times has
you
it
build a
been lowered?
budget and then you're looking at the actual to build your rates for the next year. We're only trying to have the fund be self-sustaining.
True. And when you're saying that when I was bringing up that the water used by the city, I do not define that. That's defined by state law. They define what public used water is.
But in most cities, the majority of the residents, I mean, we're kind of I would agree, but we're kind of an unusual city from the standpoint that we're more than actual just the city, and we have a lot of residents who aren't on water. So normally I would actually agree with you, and it probably doesn't matter because almost every resident is going to be on your water. When we combined, it meant that we had large areas of the city that aren't on water.
That's true. You don't think that using water at the public parks, water at City Hall, water at the maintenance building, these are all defined in the law as what is public used water, water used for public purposes. The watering the ball field down there has sometimes been over 1 million gallons in a year in certain years. This year it wasn't, but those 1 million gallons were paid for by the water customers. Or just the ballpark. And that happened year after year after year after year.
Well, really only since we consolidated, and the largest portion of unaccounted water is not those uses. And I don't disagree that everybody should pay for those purposes, but I think there's a lot of gallons that are just in the maintenance of the system, which every resident is paying for regardless of whether you're on the system. That's my only point. I just want to be clear, because you're talking about a grave injustice, and I think somebody else could make an argument that there's an injustice to the people who aren't on the water system.
They can make that argument. And we have to remember too that on the actual water towers, there's rent collected from the cell phone tower rent, and the water fund gets 10% of that. Imagine if you own a building. You know, this Water Enterprise Fund is a separate entity. If you own a building and they're going to give you 10% of the rent for somebody putting something up on your building, that's ridiculous.
But on something like that, I think that's more than fair. If you think about it, they're after the space. They're after the Wi-Fi signals. It doesn't matter where it is. All they want is they want the Wi-Fi signals. And isn't that part of all of the whole city? I mean, I think that 90% is, I mean, we talked about that. I think the 10% of the water fund, all they're getting compensated for is that actual being able to put it up on the water tower.
Well,
and that's what we're compensating the water fund for.
The other
I think that's more
rationale
than fair.
was if they stopped renting, what would happen to the water rates? Because you said yourself that the fund needs to cover its own costs. Well, covering its own costs doesn't include the rent on the tower. That's sort of a bonus if you think about that.
Right.
And if that went away, we'd have to change the rates to make up for that gap in revenue.
It should be accounted for that way, and that's where I'm saying, even you take the total rent that's collected just from those cell phone tower space being there, the city's water is more than covered.
So the other, Rick, the other issue Sue brought up was the fact that an increasing rate tier structure provides a stronger disincentive to use more water. Why would you agree or not agree with something along your lines, but something that increases the rate as you use more water?
Well, it actually does not increase, it actually does not give more incentive with the plans that you're proposing.
No, I mean yours. Why don't you, or why would you say that if you had a rate structure that increased as the number of gallons increased, why wouldn't that be a stronger disincentive to use more water than what you propose? Because that's...
Having a tier within the $5, it wouldn't be out of the question.
I mean, because that's what we hear most cities doing, and that's what the DNR, is that who we had to run by our, sir? They propose it. I'm guessing they're basing their recommendations on what they see most cities doing, what they're encouraging most cities to do.
Well, as I said, I was basing it mainly on what Wake Park is doing, and it's just...
But Rena called Way Park, and they were unaware that there was even this mandate. You say it's because it's only if you require funding. I don't know if that's true or not. There may be other issues down. I can hardly believe it's just that. That's probably the bat they're holding over your head to get you to do it. Maybe that's the strongest thing now, but I'm guessing down the road I mean, it's conservation in all types of industries is being strongly promoted. So, I mean, I don't think it's just for funding. I don't know. I may be wrong, but what's your thought on and then on having to have the plan? I didn't look at it that closely. Rena says it's like 21 pages long and project out 10 years. Somehow you have to, I guess according to the statute, provide other incentives other than what your structure is gonna comply with to get people to conserve.
Isn't that what goes in the newsletter all the time anyway? Water conservation?
Oh, it's more than that?
Ideas?
It
Well,
is more than that. Way more.
requirements are a lot more than that, and it's gonna be a time.
The 21 pages that I just heard about tonight, never heard about it before.
Well, can I just, so the finance committee did talk about this, and because there is a January 1 deadline, one of the things we said is, you know, could we put in place the tiered structure that was recommended? And then it's not to say you can't, in fact, we have to look at these every year, but go back and look. And so, because I haven't had a lot of time to look at your plan, but to look at and whether you're open to considering, or I guess I don't even know enough about the 21-page plan. So I guess we were saying, let's put something in place and then let's look at, you know, if there is something that would need to be adjusted, because I sort of agree. I think tiering off maybe yours, and you sounded maybe open to that beyond 4,000. So maybe there's another conversation that could happen. And I'm assuming these could be changed at any time as long as the council approves it. So.
Member Willenbring, did you have another?
I do have. I just wanted to have a lot of public input, and then I'll share with you what I've spent a big portion of the last week number crunching, and hopefully there's a compromise.
You want that?
No, I have my doodling in front of me. It's not worthy. It's hieroglyphics. Only I can understand it. Sorry.
Do you want to be a part
Do you
of
want
the
to leave the public to comment first?
Yeah, of course.
Does
Yeah,
anybody
please
else
do.
want to
Yeah.
comment on this before we
That's
take
vitally important.
council input further?
Tootie Hermanitz, 211 First Street West. I'm probably one of the less conservation-minded water users in this city because we do water our lawn. And we water it thoroughly and we don't have a point or anything. And I can see that this would give, the new rate thing would definitely give me a incentive to not water so much. Because now, after I hit my, couple thousand gallons, which is no problem, then I'm getting, I pay less and less with every 1,000 I use. So there's no big deal unless I'm being conservation minded. But as far as my bill is concerned, there's no big deal. But with this system, there would be. So that's the incentive. Because you asked about what's the incentive with giving a flat rate.
Which proposal are you referring to?
I'm referring to Rick's proposal.
Okay, but you're not really paying less.
No, I'll be paying.
For every additional gallon.
I am on
You're paying less per gallon when you divide it over, but you're still gonna pay more it's still gonna cost you more dollars for every additional gallon you pay. You're just dividing that base over a larger amount. So it looks like per gallon you're paying less. You're still gonna pay more dollars.
I'll be paying $5 per 1,000 gallons.
Yeah, okay.
And that's actually going to be more than I pay now when I get over that 14 or 15,000 gallons.
Okay.
And so for me, that would be an incentive to use less than the 16,000 gallons, right?
I guess.
Okay.
But if it increased from 5 to 5.5 or 6 at some other point, would that be even more incentive to use less?
That's right.
Increasing rate structure, and that's what we talk about.
I will still be paying more if I use more. That's always the way, but not per 1,000 gallons, okay?
Well, you had just previously said that you're on a $5, if we go with that proposal, it'd be $5. Currently you're paying $3.55, is it, per gallon?
Yeah.
So if you water less, you're still gonna be paying $3.55 per gallon less. I mean, so I don't know, I get your rationale
It would
there.
be going at 5.
Well, no, currently, or where you're at during the summer, this past summer, if you watered 1,000 gallons less, you'd pay $3.55 less, correct?
Okay.
And so now if you did 1,000 gallons less, you'd be at $5 savings.
Yeah.
So you're saying that difference in savings, $3.55 to $5, is why you would water less? Because
that's supposed to be your incentive, yes. And it isn't just 1,000 gallons.
Well, yes.
If that's all I had, that's only $3, okay. But I'm going more and more, so yes, my bill would be considerably less. I will pay more. But so I will use less water so that I won't have to pay more. Okay?
Anybody else?
I just had a quick question. When a water tower is constructed, who pays for that? Everyone in the city or people just on the system?
Usually it's a water availability charge. For instance, the newer developments, there's a water availability charge to hook up to it, and you pay that fee to get rid of that debt service. So it doesn't.
Water customers, the Water Enterprise Fund funds that, not the entire city.
Well, over here in the core city, that was the Pleasant Lake area. That was designed to have a SAC charge and WAC charge, and then SAC isn't irrelevant, but a WAC charge. And we had a minimum of 10 per year. It was before I was on the council, but that was the intent, to have the debt paid for with the new people that are moving in. In a development.
But the core water tower is in the water fund. I mean, the debt on the.
So where I'm going with this is the revenue that comes off the tower, why would that not all go to the water system and storage? Or is it on 90%?
That was a decision made by the council a number of years ago, and I believe that our portion, it keeps going up every year. There's a built-in incentive for the users of that tower to continue to pay, because sometimes there's going to be a failure of a structure because of welding, those are components up there. So that's why there's a built-in component to add. But if I remember right, had probably 60,000, somewhere in that range. And the council some years ago felt that if we have a $1 million operation to run using simple numbers here, $1 million and the water department was using 100,000, that's 10%. Therefore, 10% went to the water. And if 20%, if the fire department has $200,000 to run, that's 20% of the total budget. Then 20% would go in that direction. That was the intent. Now, I don't know about that, but I know that the water tower gets about 10% of the total amount. I believe that was a decision made 4 or 5 years ago, 3, 4 years ago.
Right, and the 90% goes into the road improvement
Okay.
fund.
Yeah, that's right, because
All the
yeah.
residents use.
Because that was, and that was the rationale. That doesn't mean it can't be visited, but it certainly made sense at the time.
If the water tower wasn't there, there'd be no money. That's simple.
No, what would
This is
happen if
true.
we just built another tower of some sort at a cost of 50 or 100,000, because it benefits the whole city. I mean, something like that where you're getting Wi-Fi signals, that would benefit the whole city. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to build another tower, just a structure at $100,000 and amortize that over 10 years, and the city, take all 100% of it. I mean, that was the view of that the water customers in that sense, yeah, they're providing the tower, but that's it. The rest of the airspace belongs to all of the people, not just the water customers.
Well, and I still think a bigger part of it was, how do you make sure the water rates are actually commensurate with what it's actually costing to provide the water? So if there was nothing on the water tower,
Yeah.
your rates have to be a certain amount, and if somebody ever pulled out from renting the tower, we didn't want to have to be in a place where there was, so for the reasons that it does benefit everybody, but also that there would be a huge increase potentially in rates if that changed.
Go ahead, Vince.
Randy, I think what Jerry is getting at is, we paid to put that tower up, right? They're renting it from the city. Now, there's no way that if that tower was not there, I've never seen where a city would put up a tower for private enterprise for their use.
Well, I think
That's what he's getting at.
Yeah.
I think private enterprise will put it up for their use. And if that was the case, then somebody else would come in, a private enterprise would go ahead and put it up. So, I mean, it just so happens that the tower is there, so we might as well use
You wouldn't be getting the rent that
it.
they're getting because we furnished the tower.
Yeah, but
Believe me, you would get the rent.
yeah.
I mean,
If it really becomes a moot issue, look at it like this. The fact that we're getting $60,000 that we don't have to get from taxes or from fees, it's like manna from heaven. So this is really not an issue tonight. Tonight is to try to get fair and equitable rates, but, it can be changed in the future. But I think that at this stage of the game, that was not a big issue. I haven't heard anything up until tonight about the disparity in that particular portion. But other public, I imagine,
Anybody else want to speak? Otherwise,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I'll second that.
motion make and second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Dwayne, go ahead.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think, first of all, and first and foremost, two things, we're very civil about this tonight, and I'm looking forward to these conversations that actually make sense and we come to a consensus that virtually everybody can live with. The Talman, and I'll take very little bit of credit for it because Rick did enormous amount, or Mr. Tallman did enormous amount of dollars and cents. Rick is not yet aware that I'm aware of that. I did the research today and I think I found a slight glitch in there. And simple math, if we have 20 million gallons, there's a fraction over 20 million, but this is the information that I got as you guys did last month, and we have to table it for a month to get our arms around it. And this last month, there was a lot of thought process going into it. I'll talk with the Talman endeavor first, and that is, if we take the $20 million or 20 million gallons and you divide that by 1,000, so we have 20,000 units of 1,000 each. You multiply that times the 5 that Mr. Tallman had suggested, that's $100,000 that's coming in. Simple math. It's going to take a little bit more than 100,000, obviously. Now, we did talk about the manna from heaven, or that little bit of money that comes off the tower, but we should not necessarily use that in our total budgeting. So what I've suggested, and here is where I come up with that first 20,000, the first 4,000, and I shared this with Rena and I shared it with Mr. Tallman. Enormous amount of cities have a base rate, and this was from the Municipal Water League that fired it off to us. I think I had it a couple years ago, but again, enormous amount of them have them in the range of from 1,000 per month or 2,000 because we're talking bi-monthly. Some of them are 3,000, some of them are 3,000 or 300, so it's all over the board or something like that. But it's not a new idea to have in the base or in that first amount, as we had in the past, we didn't have anything. So there's a validity in that, and I strongly believe in there, that in that 4,000 gallons that we get proposed at $5 per 1,000 gallons, that's a base fee of, and it's not a base fee, but it's basically $20 to get the first 4,000 gallons. Then I think we'd have to implement a slight upcharge so that the remaining amount of that goes all the way up to like $5.10 per 1,000 gallons after the first 4,000. It keeps on going, and I'll have the specific numbers, and I come up with 109,420. And how I do that is because the infallacy or the shortcoming in the Tallman effort is that we do not have the tier, and the tier the tier rate is something that is vitally important if we want to have the least amount of staff time to go and create, and I'm not quite sure what that 21 pages is, but if we don't have to go through the 21 pages, so with a slight modification of going to $5.10, and then we get all the way up until, if you look at it, Mr. Tallman did share, there was 435,100 gallons that was used supposedly in the park this year, according to the records that was shared with me and with the rest of the council members, which is obviously the largest one. Now, is that realistic? Could it have been a mistake? It looks like in 1 month, and it was in the heat of the summer, 422,900. That's a lot of water. But anyways, we have to make a decision based on what we have in front of us. So if we go and take that $5.10 and continue to take all the rest of the water after the basic 4,000, that would generate another 54,509, along with the original 388 units. Not meters, but units, times the 4,000, that comes out to you generate that into 9,312 units, multiply that times 5, that's 46,560. So we're just a fraction over 100,000 at that point. Then to modify that tier system, or to work that tier system in, if you really look at the numbers, all of them under 100,000 are a whole bunch. There's 23 of them, only 23 units that are over 100,000. So my proposal is from 100,000 to 200,000. There's a grand total of 23 minus 5, so 18. That would, and you carry that extra from 100,000 to 200,000 instead of like you're suggesting the 2,000 to 8,480. And we're ratcheting way up high. It says those are the ones that would have to pay the additional, and I'm suggesting $1 per 1,000 additional. So instead of $5, they'd be paying $6 for that last amount of money, for the last amount of gallons over 100,000. And bear with me, there's 5 of them that are over 200,000. And of those 5, one of them is the 435,000 for the park. So if we're conservative, those are the 5, and I have no names other than the park, so I have no idea who the other people are. And it was staff that has that on there, a couple of businesses. By the way, water is public, electricity is not allowed publicly, but water, anybody can ask. anybody in the city has to give that hot water information to the public. That is data practices. So we get all done with it. It comes out to $109,420. We would accomplish the tier rate, so the state would not, hold us hostage if we wanted to get some bonding money for something like that. So that's a slight modification. Conversely, if we look at the one that was proposed by the recommendation from the finance meeting last month, and then we tabled it, the shortcoming in that one is if there is I'll affectionately say it, a conservative family that generates less than 8,408 gallons that they use, they're paying at $3.45. If it gets above that, it ratchets it up. Well, there might be some families that have a husband and wife and a half a dozen or 2, 3, 4 children, a dog, a cat. They're using a lot of water. Why should they have to be penalized? It costs the city the same amount for that water that's going through that pipe, no matter where it goes. It's very simple. It costs no different. So the water doesn't know when it's going into this unit or that unit. So I think for the fair and the fair and equitable thing is to try to get as many of those as we possibly can all at the same unit. And that's what the Tall-Minute plan does. And then I'll take the will and bring added value that we're putting in it to get it from 100,000 up to that 109,420. And then we would have that $6,429 water tower rental, though we should never rely on it like the legal, like the what do you call legal aid, not the legal aid, but the
Local government.
Local government, thank you, Sue. So then we would be at 115,000. It's a far cry from the budget, but it's probably a very realistic number, what we need to have. Now, as it relates to, I went to a water meeting in Waite Park put on by the Rural Water, and they suggest that it takes 50%, the recommended amount is 50% money in savings or set aside of a typical operation. So if we have a $120,000 revenue, half of that is, $50,000 to $60,000. That's what we should have in a ready reserve. And as our pipes are getting older, there will be more and more collapses and stuff like that. So if we're gonna err, we have to, at least for now, at least until we see how the reaction is of this new state mandated conservation. It can be adjusted again next year, but I think we're very, very close. Neither one of the two programs are that far apart from each other when I think about it. We have $115,000 that we need to have to run it. Being people conservative, I think that's an obtainable one. Just how do we get there? And I think that's the most logical. Now, if we do not accomplish it tonight, the state is not going to come in and shut down our doors. We're going to continue. And if it takes another month of public education, telling them, or getting this on a data spreadsheet and to shoot it full of holes if there is some, I'm all for that. But let us please, get this thing taken care of once and for all. We've been fighting this thing way too long.
Can you say what all of that down to?
The very first, thank you. Yep, I'm drifting, sorry. The first 300, there's 388 units today this one shows 384, but there must have been 4 of them that were added since this was put together, whatever. 388 times the 4,000 gallons at the $5 per thousand. Once you get beyond that 4,000, then the proposed recommendation would be $5.10 per thousand, all the way up to 999 or to 99,999. At 10,000, at 100,000 through 200,000, or $1 less than 200,000, then that rate would be added to those additional ones, $1 per thousand. Anything over 200,000 gallons per year would go at an additional $2 And that gives the incentive for people that are really high-end users to go and try to curtail their use or something like that. Very simple. The math, I did it several times, it works out. It'll come right at around $115,000 of net income coming in.
Well, I've got one last thing here. Many of you maybe don't know, this is Randy's last meeting as a counselor, as he decided not to run this last election. And I'm not sure if people know that Randy's been involved with Pleasant Lake and Rockville Politics Council for 16 years. Dave says he thinks it might be even longer. I tell you, 16 years to me means an amazing level of citizen support. It means many successful elections, a lot of years of intelligent, objective leadership and good decision-making, spending a lot of times at meetings, and a lot of sacrifice for him and his family. I know I speak for all the residents of the city when I tell you, Randy, that you have performed at the very highest level anyone could hope for, and you're leaving huge shoes to fill here. Thank you very much on behalf of all the citizens for all your years of superb service to the residents of this city. And I, of course, make you take a plaque to remind, just a small reminder of the appreciation all of us residents have for your fantastic work all these years.
Very good. Way to go, Randy. I did it all the month. And don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger.
Now I'll take that motion.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.